Did you know that King Solomon, one of the wisest men in history, is said to have had an African son? Ethiopian tradition tells a fascinating story about Menelik I, the legendary son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. But is this tale as straightforward as it seems? Let's dive into history, legend, and cultural perspectives to uncover the truth behind this ancient connection. Before we dive in, it's important to address a key question. Was King Solomon African? Historically, ancient Israel was situated in the Middle East, a region geographically close to Africa. In fact, before colonialism and modern definitions of continents, the Middle East and parts of North Africa were often seen as interconnected regions. But when we talk about ethnicity and culture, Solomon belonged to the Israelites, a Semitic people with their own distinct traditions. This duality, geography versus ethnicity, is why this discussion sparks so many perspectives. The story of Solomon's African connection begins with the Queen of Sheba, but who was she and where did she come from? Ethiopian tradition identifies her as Makeda, a queen from the ancient kingdom of Sheba, located in modern-day Ethiopia, and Yemen. The Bible describes her as a wealthy and wise queen who visited Solomon in Jerusalem, bringing lavish gifts. Historians are divided. Was Sheba an Ethiopian or Arabian kingdom? The Queen of Sheba remains one of the most enigmatic figures in history. Described in the Bible, the Quran, and Ethiopian traditions, she is often depicted as a powerful and wise monarch whose fame reached the ears of King Solomon. But her origins spark a lively debate among historians and scholars. On one hand, Ethiopian tradition identifies her as Queen Makeda, ruling over the ancient kingdom of Sheba in what is now modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea. This view is central to Ethiopian identity and its claim to a Solomonic dynasty. In Ethiopia, the Queen of Sheba isn't just a historical figure, she is a cultural and spiritual icon. On the other hand, many historians associate Sheba with the ancient Sabaean kingdom in modern-day Yemen. The Sabaeans were a wealthy and powerful Arabian kingdom known for their control of trade routes and impressive architecture. Archaeological findings, including inscriptions and ruins, suggest that Sheba could have been located in Arabia, with the Queen of Sheba serving as a Sabaean ruler. Despite the debate, the Ethiopian narrative has become the most enduring and influential in connecting the Queen of Sheba to Africa. According to Ethiopian legend, her visit to Solomon not only forged a bond between two great civilizations, but also laid the foundation for Ethiopia's royal lineage and its ties to Judeo-Christian traditions. And this is where the story of Menelik I begins, a figure who symbolizes the union of two worlds and the enduring legacy of this legendary queen. The birth of Menelik I is not just a tale of royalty, but also one of destiny and legacy. According to Ethiopian tradition, after the Queen of Sheba's fateful visit to King Solomon, their bond resulted in the birth of a son. The queen returned to her kingdom in Ethiopia, where she gave birth to Menelik, whose name means son of the wise. Raised in Ethiopia, Menelik grew up hearing stories about his father, the legendary King Solomon, renowned for his wisdom, wealth, and devotion to God. Although Menelik was the heir to one of Ethiopia's greatest queens, he lived a humble life, guided by Ethiopian values and traditions. As he matured, Menelik became curious about his lineage and decided to travel to Jerusalem to meet his father. According to Ethiopian accounts, his journey was filled with purpose, not just to meet Solomon, but also to understand his identity and heritage. When Menelik arrived in Jerusalem, Solomon immediately recognized him as his son. Their meeting was a pivotal moment, bridging two great civilizations. Solomon was so impressed with Menelik's wisdom and character that he offered him the throne of Israel. However, Menelik declined, choosing instead to honor his Ethiopian roots and return to his homeland. But before he left, Menelik is said to have taken something with him, the Ark of the Covenant. Ethiopian tradition holds that this was not an act of theft, but a divine intervention. The Ark, believed to house the Ten Commandments, symbolized God's covenant with his people. Its journey to Ethiopia, under Menelik's guardianship, marked a significant shift in spiritual and historical narratives. Menelik became the first emperor of the Solomonic dynasty, forging a direct link between Ethiopian royalty and ancient Israel. This legacy has shaped Ethiopia's identity for centuries, blending African and Judeo-Christian traditions. Since the release of our earlier short video, one question has sparked a lively debate. If King Solomon was African, why emphasize that Menelik I, his son, was African? Isn't that redundant? It's a valid point, and one that deserves careful consideration. To answer this, we need to distinguish between different ways of understanding identity: geographical, ethnic, and cultural. Geographically speaking, ancient Israel was located in a region now considered the Middle East, but in antiquity this area was closely connected to Africa. Before the modern division of continents, parts of the Middle East, including Israel, were often seen as an extension of the African landmass. In this sense, one could argue that Solomon was African geographically, given the proximity and historical ties between these regions. However, when we talk about ethnicity and culture, Solomon's identity becomes more specific. He was part of the Israelites, a Semitic people with distinct traditions, languages, and beliefs. The Israelites were culturally and ethnically different from most African groups, including the people of ancient Ethiopia. So, when Ethiopian tradition describes Menelik as an African, it emphasizes his connection to his mother, the Queen of Sheba, who is deeply rooted in Ethiopian history and identity. Now, before we go any further, I know some of you might be thinking about the argument that Solomon himself was black, because of the lines in the Song of Songs where it's written, "I am black, but comely." However, it's important to understand the context. These words were not spoken by Solomon, but rather by the woman in the poem, symbolizing her own feelings of insecurity and beauty. The verse is poetic and metaphorical, meant to convey themes of love, self-image, and longing, rather than a literal racial identity. So, while it may sound compelling, it's crucial to interpret this passage in its proper literary and historical context. This distinction helps us understand why Menelik's story is celebrated as part of Ethiopia's African heritage. This isn't just a debate about labels. It's about recognizing the cultural intersections that make this story so powerful. Menelik I's tale is not only about his lineage, but also about the blending of two great civilizations, Israel and Ethiopia. By highlighting Menelik as an African, Ethiopian tradition celebrates its unique role in preserving this legacy and connecting it to African history. We also understand that historical narratives like this can be interpreted differently depending on cultural, regional, and personal perspectives. History is complex, and legends often serve as bridges between fact and faith, geography, and culture. We welcome these discussions as a way to deepen our collective understanding. If you have insights, questions, or challenges, we encourage you to share them respectfully and constructively. That's how we learn and grow as a community. As we explore stories like Menelik I and the Ark of the Covenant, we see how legends shape our understanding of history and culture. Whether you view Solomon as African, Semitic, or something else entirely, his connection to the Queen of Sheba and Ethiopia is a testament to the rich and interconnected history of humanity. If you enjoyed this exploration of history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going.